We anticipate in the next 10 to 12 years approximately 8 to 6 million Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the number 2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being number 2. You're going to go down and become number 4. Now, common sense, even a third grade education would tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were number 2, you all jumped ahead of me, but anyway, you can guess what you're going to get when you become number 4.
President Biden, do you support reparations?
Well, I mean, since I haven't spoken on this, got a chance. Number one, the reason we're the country we are is because of immigration. We've been able to cherry pick the best from every single continent. The people who come here have determination, resilience. They are ready to stand up and work like the devil. We have 24 of every 100 children in our school today is Hispanic. The idea that we are going to walk away and not provide every opportunity for them is that not only stupid and immoral, but it's bad for America. They are the future of America. Systemic racism that has plagued our nation for far, far too long. I said that over the course of the past year that the blinders have been taken off the nation, the American people. But what many Americans didn't see or had simply refused to see couldn't be ignored any longer. Those 8 minutes and 46 seconds that took George Floyd's life opened the eyes of millions of Americans and millions of people around all over the world. It was the knee on the neck of justice, and it wouldn't be forgotten. It's not white Americans' fault, but just a fact.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
We are owed $104 trillion on the very low end, plus $735 billion recurring. This number does not include the cost of about 50 Black Wall Streets that were decimated, nor compound interest from 2017 when Sean D. Rochester's book, The Black Tax, was published, nor the cost of Black life, nor the cost of living increases, nor the war on drugs, nor the current day pandemic. The number I'm working with is for slavery, Jim Crow, and accrued ongoing systemic racism, oppression, and disadvantage in the country our ancestors built with their lives.
Good evening on the West Coast. Good evening in the mountain. Good evening in the Central. Good evening on the East Coast. You know exactly who it is, family. Angela Nirvana, your hostess with the mostest on the Reparationist Perspective. Bringing you those A-Docs, hot topics, and making the case for reparations. Making the case for weaponizing our votes and socializing our suffering. And today, family, I want to thank you one and all for tuning in to this evening's edition of Ida B. Wells 2.0 presents Anti-Black Racism. Yes, family, we're going to talk about all of the fuckery. We're going to talk about how Chauvin gets $50,000 a year still. He didn't lose his pension as Mr. George Floyd lost his life at the knee of the white inferior glacier donkey race soldier. I see you, Brian. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining live. And for those of you who have yet to chat where you're streaming from, I want to thank you so much for joining the live. Yes, so he gets his pension. Brian shared another article that I quickly incorporated into tonight's subject matter about how he's now in negotiations with the feds. Okay? Oh, the puckery is just deep, deep, and more deep. So let's get into it because I don't want to delay you. I'm a little later than anticipated, but you know, that's ADOC's life, family. I get here when I can. So let's start, right with the Biden. He offers crime plan as the polls hint at political vulnerability. Now, I need you guys to understand the correlation between how these Mickey Thicky Democrats weaponize our oppression for the come up politically. Kamala Harris did it when she was running for the Senate seat. She promised Maitrice Richardson's dad, Mr. Richardson, that she would open up an investigation to see if any of the Glacier Donkey race soldiers were liable, which they were, for his daughter's murder in the hills after they released her at 2 a.m. to her own devices. Okay? They found Maitrice's body a month later. The police were responsible because they had promised her mother, which you could hear that exchange in a 911 call, that they would keep her because mom was somewhere like South Central and Malibu is a good, hour and a half in the dead of night to try to go and get her daughter who had a bipolar episode at the restaurant up in the Malibu Hills. Okay, this beautiful, educated, master degreed woman, they decided to arrest her. And so Mr. Richardson thought that Kamala's, interest in bringing the police to justice for his daughter, whom they let out of prison at 2 a.m. with nothing up in the Malibu Hills, he thought that was sincere. And so, naturally, all of many blacks got behind and supported her in the senatorial race. Okay? She was AG at the time, running for Senate seat. And once she procured the Senate seat, she told Mr. Richardson there was nothing to see here. Same with Amy Klobuchar. We just went over that yesterday. How Mayan Burrells was 16 years old and wrongfully accused of murdering a young girl, 11 years old, in her home while doing homework by a stray bullet. Amy Klobuchar came for his jugular. He got life. And so she decides to run, for the president. And this is in Minnesota. And when she saw her numbers being impacted, right, she decides to reopen the investigation after Mayan Burrell has spent 18 years behind bars for a murder that the party whose stray bullet it was that hit the child had already told them he was nowhere on the scene when it happened. Okay? So now you've got Biden offering the crime plan as his polls hint at political vulnerability. So the way the Democrats win is to continue to oppress us, to continue to keep their knee on our necks, literally and figuratively. Biden said on the campaign trail in an era of George Floyd and defund the police that he was going to give $350 million to the race soldiers. Well, he bumped that M up to a B. Instead is carving out $350 billion from COVID relief, of which it states that we were the ones to die disproportionately from COVID. He's using a portion of that relief to empower the Glacier Donkey race soldiers to do what? Come into our communities. That money is to militarize the police, to come into our communities and to continue to kill us with immunity, with impunity. Because as you see him giving $350 billion to the Glacier Donkey race soldiers, you don't see any movement on the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act that Jim Coon Clyburn said we don't need. The most important piece of that act, which is to end qualified immunity. If you take out ending qualified immunity, even if you keep it in there, of all the other things they're offering in that act, I don't believe that would have spared George Floyd. Putting in ending qualified immunity and showing these race soldiers that you will be responsible when you annihilate an unarmed ADOX is about as good as that act really gets. And so you see Biden increasing these dollars to the race soldiers while not delivering on reparations, not supporting the cashless reparations HR 40 study, right? And he's not, making an executive order to protect our lives akin to the way he did the Asians, whom he enriched AAPI $150 million. So I want you to get the correlation behind you continuing to vote blue no matter who. Now, I'm not for not showing up to the polls and not voting, but why do we continue to deliver these Democrats a trifecta? Our people are doing that. I'm suggesting that we vote red top of the ticket and a blue Congress to protect the over 50% of ADOX who rely on government assistance by design of institutional systemic racism. And I know my regulars, schmegglers, I'm grateful to you, are tired of me beating that drum. This is redundant because new people are watching and they need to understand that we need to play chess with our vote, the only commodity we've got over what we've been doing, which has gotten us a race to the bottom as the anchor of this country's capitalism is what it's done. Because we just continue to deliver this nonsense and then want to clutch our invisible pearls and scratch our balls as to how we got here on the bottom of the Titanic as the anchor of this country with 3 Ks, capitalism with 3 Ks. You need to see the correlation between you delivering them the vote and delivering our peril at the same time. You can't give them a trifecta. A trifecta of either party gets us George Floyd. That has not ceased. They have not let up. I have more about some recent incidences on tomorrow's show. So let's get into the article because we got quite a few to go through. President Joe Biden announced a plan to curb gun crimes and crack down on firearms dealers amid a nationwide spike in violent crime that poses a political challenge for the White House. Now, whose guns do you think they're coming to take? Whose guns do you think they're cracking down on? Not the domestic terrorists called the KKK, skinheads, and the neo-Nazis. They're coming for ADOX guns. So they've neutralized us economically, and now they're going to neutralize us in terms of gun power. And they're coming for the vote steadily as they weaponize immigration against us. Y'all better wake up. The strategy would allow states and municipalities to tap into pandemic relief funds to hire police officers. Glacier donkey race soldiers is what they are. Under certain circumstances, Biden said on Wednesday, providing resources to combat an increase in shootings, armed robberies, and assaults. Now, Biden has no plan to bring in jobs, to bring in education, to bring in home and business ownership. For ADOC specifically, like he specifically gave $30.2 billion more dollars to the Indians, who also enslaved us, who also denied the Black descendants of Cherokee and Seminole Indian enslavement, the reparations they've been owed since 1866. You know, those same Indians that sold Elizabeth Warren and her glacier donkey peers, the reparations that was owed to ADOCs for $5 under the Dawes rolls. Look it up. I'm not doing that show right now. I'm just trying to tie in the way I see it as I read you the current events of all the puckery and share the puckery with you through an ADOC's lens. Because this is not the way you're going to get it on the corporate We 3K's news network. They're not going to deliver it to you in the way that I always will. Because every episode is about making the case for reparations and weaponizing our vote and socializing our suffering. We don't do that by continuing to deliver the Democrats. We just do not. So he can provide them resources to combat an increase in shootings, armed robberies, and assaults. But he can't bring in education, jobs, federal jobs guarantees, specifically for us, home ownership and business ownership. No executive orders for our social justice and economic inclusion. We just get to hold these nuts, right? Called corporate capitalism. That's what we get to do. The president also said he'll pursue other measures, some through executive action such as zero tolerance rules for gun dealers, expanding summer employment programs for teenagers, and helping people released from prison find jobs. Me speaking, I'm going to go into this tomorrow when I'm going to talk about a 76-year-old grandmother who is being returned to jail because being arrested by these race soldiers is not our only problem, you see. A lot of us, 40%, are returned through this broken parole system designed to keep our people in a perpetual state of enslavement in the private prison industrial complex. 76-year-old grandmother who was on her computer looking for work, none of which is arranged for you. When they release you, they give you about 25 to 40 bucks and bid you on your way and want you to find a way to reincorporate yourself into society with a record and no resources. So, helping people released from prison find jobs, why not revamp the entire parole system? Expanding summer employment programs for teens when the very people you're arresting are between ages 18 and 35. They need more than summer employment. They're the ones that need employment to hold it down for their families, to marry their women, to raise their children with some dignity and in some dignity in terms of housing and education. But you want to give summer employment programs for teens and not fix the real systemic issues that are happening here, that are anchoring us to the bottom of the Titanic. Quote, we have the opportunity to come together now as Democrats and Republicans, my words, as fellow Americans to fulfill the first responsibility of a government and democracy to keep each other safe, Biden said at the White House. Enough. Once again, family, these Democrats and Republicans alike create the problems in our communities and want our vote to be the solution. Keep in mind, he's doing this because his poll numbers are being impacted. right? And so it's politically advantageous to talk about more militarization of the police in our communities instead of giving reparations so that we can pull ourselves up by our bootless straps as we've been expected to since they freed us from slavery and gave our 40 acres and a mule to white immigrants and our reparations to slave owners. All the wealth they benefit from, they killed us and stolen it. But now you want to do akin to what you did with the crime bill. The war on drugs was a war on blacks. The war on poverty is a war on blacks. ADOC specifically, as we're 90% of the black population in this country that our ancestors built with their lives. Biden's effort comes amid an increase in violent crime, a trend that could stymie his push for Congress to pass a bipartisan police overhaul. What have we given our kids to live for? This is not for the Glacier Donkey mass shooters that they take alive. This is for us. Because crimes, black on black crimes and murders are on the rise. That is not who we are as a people. You have literally robbed them of all the resources to be American by killing us and stealing that wealth to enrich yourselves. And now you're leaving us to become fourth-class citizens in the country our ancestors built with their lives and force us to eat the cost of slavery. And then you want to scratch your balls wondering why is so much violent crime up in our communities. All you have to do is juxtapose what you see happening today with no resources to what was happening when the boomers benefited greatly from affirmative action. They got college. They got home ownership. They got good paying jobs. When we had those things, we didn't have violent crimes and murders in our communities. This is all by design to ethnically cleanse up out this country, us specifically. And none of this changes until you do something specifically for us. Summer programs is too broad. Summer programs is too broad for teenagers. Which teenagers specifically? You need specifics and you need quotas. And these immigrants are working as white folks to roll back all of our affirmative action. I'll share about it on another show. Large cities saw a 30% increase in murders and an 8% rise in gun-related assaults in 2020, according to administration officials who pointed to pandemic-related isolation and loose gun laws as having fueled the spike. Me speaking, we were the highest unemployed and underemployed before the pandemic. Where do you think we are now since the pandemic? And your answer is to give the race soldiers $350 billion more dollars. And the teenagers maybe will benefit from some summer programs and helping people find jobs when they are released from prison. That's how weak this is. Concerning fixing what they created. This is not our fault. Polls signal growing unease over crime, a potential liability for Biden and Democrats in next year's midterm elections. And so, once again, because his poll numbers are being threatened, let's lean in on the militarization of the police on ADOCs. Let's take them out. Let's bring them to jail. Let's hold on to the nonviolent offenders. The grandmother I'm speaking of was locked up for a bazillion years over weed. While the states turn a profit. And because she's trying to better herself on the computer, she missed a couple of calls and is headed back to jail at 76. But we won't reform none of that. We won't write executive orders to end billion more dollars to make sure you stay in office and in power in the Congress come 2022. And again for the presidential run in 2024. At the expense of the very ADOCs, you create these problems and need our vote. So I don't want your family to fall for these trick bags like these little CBC studies on what you choose, as if you should have to choose between voting rights acts, reparations, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, and there's one more. I'm going to post the link so you guys can be sure and fill that in and sign reparations on that poll. So you don't have any other ways to remedy what's happening with us, because your capitalism with 3Ks needs a bottom cast, and you decided long ago that ADOCs is it. A Yahoo News YouGov poll released in May found that nearly 50% of respondents said crime is a very big problem in the U.S. Not poverty, not institutional systemic racism, not the war on poverty, which is the war on blacks. But they always want to go to what the manifestation is of the very things they're doing to oppress us as a people. Let's go straight to crime as a problem. Not the fact that we killed them and stole all of their wealth that their ancestors built with their lives. And oh, by the way, let's not teach American with 3Ks history. That's not critical race theory. It's American with 3Ks history. About 36% of respondents at least somewhat approved of Biden's handling of crime, while 44% at least somewhat disapproved. Republicans have accused the president of being soft on crime, saying he has not done enough to rebut some liberals who call for cutting spending on police departments. Biden has repeatedly said he does not favor defunding the police. Nor does he favor reparations. He can say it all day long, but has he done anything? He could have signed an executive order to get a commission going for HR 40 if he really supported reparations. But when it comes to ADOCs, everything has to be washed through a split Congress. Even though we're supposed to have the majority, you got 8 Democrats who voted down a $15 an hour minimum wage. The president also reiterated his call for lawmakers to pass gun control measures, including a ban on assault weapons and a repeal of a liability shield for gun makers. Asked whether he really thinks a narrowly divided Congress will reinstate an assault weapons ban, he says, "I never give up hope." He knows that ish ain't gonna pass. The perception that Democrats are too cavalier about public safety led to the passage of the 94 crime bill, which Biden supported as a senator. Not only supported, he's the author. But Biden came under fire during the 2020 election over his backing of the law, which civil rights activists has decided as helping to disproportionately fill American prisons with black and brown people. And guess what? Nothing is changing under this new crime bill, but they're language it differently. They'll propagandize the hell out of it to get everyone in agreement for more oppression, more state-sanctioned execution, more slavery and private prison for who? ADOCs. They'll make it sound prettier and milder and easier. But there's nothing pretty, mild, or easy when you support these glacier donkey race soldiers with $350 billion. We know what that means for our people. The Joe Biden of today understands that he needs to be different from the Joe Biden of the 94 crime bill, Udi Ofer, clearly an immigrant, director of the American Civil Liberties Union's Justice Division said in a statement. That's because leaders of both political parties now recognize that a lock-em-up approach doesn't address systemic problems and only creates generations of harm. Really? This is what I've got to say to you Negro pens. To the niggerati, to the color gatekeepers of identity and respectability politics and white institutional white supremacy. This particular Klansman is not reformed. He is not reformed. He remains the author of the 94 crime bill, which has locked up about 2 million of our black men. So please, don't buy this nonsense. This is what they want you to believe, that he is a reformed Klansman. This is Strom Thurmond's boy. Look him up. Nothing's changed about that. He is more covert about his racism than Donald Trump, who is overt. But a racist is a racist. Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland held a meeting Wednesday at the White House on crime prevention. Participants included New Jersey Attorney General Gurbir Grewal, more immigrants running the country, Baton Rouge, Louisiana Police Chief Murphy Paul, Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott, and Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Levine Cava. Y'all don't believe me when I tell you that the intent and the design, since white folks are losing numbers because they're infertile, they're making immigrants white, the ones with money. They're helping them professionally and politically to take over their institutional systemic racism so that they can continue to oppress us like the white people they've been made, akin to how the Irish and the Italian were made white in this country. You can hear it all up in the names. The plan that the president discussed on Wednesday has 5 pillars. Stem the flow of firearms, including by enacting a zero tolerance program, bolster program for gun dealers who willfully violate the law, and launching teams to slow the trafficking of guns between cities. You mean the ones that they drop in our communities like they did the drugs? Those guns? Bolster funding for law enforcement, including by directing the Treasury Department to allow communities experiencing a surge in gun violence to use their money from the American Rescue Plan's $350 billion state and local government funding to hire law enforcement officials or pay overtime for community policing strategies. This ain't a lack of community policing strategy. They clearly know how to take the glacier dunking mass murderers alive all over the country. Even the ones that murder them get taken alive. Launch a task force of 14 cities to support community violence intervention programs, which could also tap into COVID aid funds. Expand summer program and job availability for teens and young adults. Do more to help people released from prison get jobs. No reform. The crime strategy announcement gives Biden an opportunity to put his stamp on the debate over criminal justice. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said Tuesday that Biden's plan on community safety goes hand in hand with an effort by allies to reach a deal on a police overhaul. Biden had hoped for a deal on a police reform bill by late May. Senator Tim Scott, the South Carolina Republican, who has been heavily involved in the talks, said he thinks it's June or bust to get an agreement. Okay, I've had enough of that article. Thank you guys for joining the live. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications. What's up, William Dickens? I'll see you, Antoine Foster. Thank you guys for joining the live. I'll be back over to visit with you momentarily. I got some more stuff to unpack. So, despite the fact that Chauvin executed Mr. George Floyd in front of the nation and the world on video, thank you, Miss Frazier, for taking the video and allowing your poor mind to be more traumatized than it already is as an American descendant of chattel slavery living in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Thank you. But this Mickey Ficky will still be eligible to keep his pension despite the guilty verdict. Although he was fired from the police department, has been convicted of second-degree murder in the death of Mr. Floyd, the Minnesota Public Employees Retirement Association confirmed to Newsweek that he would remain eligible for those benefits. Where's that executive order, Biden? Every Glacier Donkey race soldier who executes an unarmed black man, woman, or child should lose their pension. That should go to the family. Quote, regardless of the outcome today, Chauvin remains eligible for a pension. He's eligible to commence a monthly benefit reduced for early retirement at age 50 or an unreduced benefit at 55. He turned 45 years old last month. So literally he could spend 15 years and walk for good behavior because he's going to be cocooned in luxury. I did that show yesterday, showing you guys the inside of his cell. It looks like the Waldorf Astoria as compared to how our brothers and sisters and children had to live in squalor. Many of whom are there for nonviolent offenses or caught up in this broken parole system. I'm going to do that show tomorrow, but I digress. He's living in a lap of luxury, can walk in 15, only got 22 and a half years. When, like I shared yesterday, Mayan Burrell, wrongfully accused of a stray bullet killing an 11-year-old while she did her homework, who Amy Klobuchar helped to give life at 16 years old, had 18 years before her Glacier Donkey ass ran for office and decided, after trying to defend arresting him with no evidence and a testimony of the actual shooter who said he wasn't on the scene, when she saw that that didn't work, to be tough on crime on America's national stage, pushing and supporting her decision to keep the innocent Mayan Burrell on lockdown, then she opened up a reinvestigation and he was just pardoned in December of last year. This is what you can do to the very people you've neutralized economically. Whatever the hell you want. You can kill them by state sanction. You can enslave them in the private prison industrial complex. You can make them the face of anti-Asian racist sentiment. You can get angry with them for using the law against you, for having weaponized the law against them to make them do time. Hello, Mr. Bill Cosby. You can even get your own people to be mad that Mr. Bill Cosby is now free because he had lawyers who were smart enough to take this to the Supreme Court. When these racist Glacier Donkey prosecutors duped him into giving a deposition that they weaponized against him in court to imprison him. And you got Negro pens, the niggerati, the color gatekeepers of identity and respectability politics and white supremacy, mad because Mr. Bill Cosby is about to sue Pennsylvania and own that biatch. You got our own people mad about that. That's how messed up in the mind we are as a people. You got white women sleeping on casting couches because they Me Too a thing and weaponizing against Bill Cosby after he paid that white, the Glacier Donkey woman, Andrea, whatever the hell, got y'all really believing that he raped her, drugged and raped her when she came to see him about 20 more times for more sex after accusing him of rape. When you look at the timeline. According to an analysis, so back to Chauvin turning 45. So he could take his pension in 5 or 10 years. He spends about 15 and gets out on good behavior because he'll be in isolation in what is considered the Waldorf Astoria of prisons. And according to an analysis of police payroll, salary, and contract information from CNN, he could receive more than $1 million in pension benefits, which are partially funded by taxpayers during his retirement years. And ADOX is released on $40 to their own devices and paroled for another 20 years, and any injury, any infraction could go straight back to jail. Our tax dollars pay these Glacier Donkey race soldiers to execute us with impunity. And our tax dollars pay those civil suits. Their pension goes untouched. And so now the taxpayers of Minnesota get to partially fund his $1 million pension. So around 55 in about 10 years, 15, 55, 60, he'll be living on Easy Street. He'll qualify to receive what could amount to $50,000 a year in state pension payments. But I scream too much, right? I'm the problem. Although some state laws allow for the forfeiture of pensions for employees that are convicted of felonies related to their work, laws in Minnesota do not require such relinquishments. But you're dealing with the same MPD that was covering up what happened to Mr. George Floyd until Darnella Frazier's video went viral and the country took to the streets. Had the country not made much ado about it, there wouldn't have been anything done about it. I already shared with y'all in the 22 years he was on the force, 19 had complaints, 8 of which was the practice of the kill choke he finally executed on Mr. George Floyd. So he was able to weaponize not having a record that he should have had for 19 other occasions to get a lighter sentence of 22 and a half years and able to walk in 15 for good behavior while being in isolation in the Waldorf Astoria of prisons. In Minnesota, employees, whether terminated voluntarily or for cause, remain entitled to future benefits unless they choose to forfeit their future benefits to receive a refund of all their contributions made during their employment. All they do is win. If they choose to get a refund, they will not receive any benefit that has been funded by the employer. There is an exception to pension members in the case of death. Para administers the plan in accordance with Minnesota statutes. Neither our board nor our staff have the discretion to increase, decrease, deny, or revoke benefits, Anderson wrote. Any changes to current law would need to be done through the legislative process, which is why we've got to be involved in the legislative process. These pensions are extremely difficult to take away from workers who have been guaranteed benefits in their employment contracts, and police unions have fought hard to protect these pensions, which are funded by a combination of taxpayers, workers, and investment returns. Less than half of states have laws that allow for pensions to be taken away from police who have been convicted of a felony. Some states allow for pensions to be taken away for specific crimes like sexual crimes, but not for the conviction of an officer using excessive force or execution of ADOCs. So the lawyer of Floyd's daughter, Gianna, and Gianna's mother, Roxy Washington, have previously called for changes to police pension laws. I don't know why they don't sue for his pension. Quote, pensions are one of the leading reasons officers are not concerned about being terminated. That's why you see them, being terminated and jumping ship before brought to trial when they do these heinous acts against ADOCs. They're comfortably walking away. There's nothing being threatened in terms of the way they get to live. It's one of the root causes in some of the most horrific cases we see, Attorney Chris Stewart said in a June 2020 statement. The laws must change regarding pensions. If an officer is fired or arrested, they must either lose their pension entirely or have it reduced substantially. I believe in having it removed altogether. They must lose it altogether in its entirety. So let's jump to the article that Brian Johnson sent me. He's now, Derek Chauvin, negotiating a plea deal with the feds. It just keeps getting more and more rich, doesn't it, family? After being sentenced to more than 22 years in prison by a Minnesota judge last week for his involvement, not just his involvement, he actually executed Mr. Floyd. Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin is now negotiating with prosecutors regarding the federal charges he still faces. Minneapolis CBS affiliate WCCO reports that federal prosecutors are in talks. Excuse me, family. With Chauvin about a possible plea deal. And that deal is what he was likely referring to when he made a cryptic comment to the family of George Floyd during his sentencing. During his sentencing hearing at the Hennepin County Government Center, Chauvin said that due to some additional legal matters at hand, I'm not able to give a full formal statement at this time. There's going to be some other information in the future that would be of interest, and I hope things will give you some peace of mind. That made me throw up in my mouth when I heard him say that. How dare you? How dare you be so insensitive as to believe anything you could say or do? Give this family a peace of mind when they've lost Mr. George Floyd. He told the George Floyd family this after expressing a brief condolence. WCCO also reports that as part of a possible plea deal, Chauvin would have to publicly explain what he did to Floyd and why In return, Chauvin could get a 20 to 25-year sentence, which he would serve at the same time as the state sentence, and that he would serve his time in federal, not state prison. Why wouldn't that be on top of the 22 and a half years? Can somebody explain that to me in the chat? Why would he be able to do this sentence at the same time? As part of a possible plea deal, Chauvin would have to publicly explain what he did to Floyd and why. In return, he could get a 20 to 25-year sentence, which he would serve at the same time as a 22 and a half year sentence he just got on the state level. And he would get to go to a federal Waldorf Astoria of a prison instead of a state Waldorf Astoria prison. Without a plea, Chauvin risked being convicted in federal court as he was on all charges brought against him by Minnesota prosecutors for using excessive force against Mr. Floyd and depriving Mr. Floyd of his civil rights, for which Chauvin could face life in prison, according to WCCO. No plea deal. Life in prison. The report also notes that there was an earlier attempt at a plea deal between Chauvin and federal prosecutors last May, but that deal collapsed at the 11th hour. Let's keep the pressure on, family. It's up to us. It is up to us. I have one more story, and then I'll see what you have to say about it. Making pretty good time. We're at 7:51. Police reform negotiations in Congress are teetering on collapse. The cops may be to blame. Let's talk about it. When lawmakers negotiating police reform released a statement last week saying they had agreed on a framework and would keep talking, the words painted a rosy picture of discussions that in reality are teetering on collapse, according to those involved. Outside special interest groups are playing a critical role in the negotiation, as they often do on Capitol Hill. But this time the divide is pitting law enforcement representatives against one another and threatening any chance of success. Law enforcement are represented by different groups. The sheriffs, who cover most rural areas, have their organization, and urban police are divided. The unionized officers represented by one organization and police chiefs by another. And instead of unifying the negotiations over reforms, have left the police and the sheriffs feuding. Despite claims of progress, after more than 3 months, the process is wearing on members, and some are questioning whether the other side wants a deal or political forces are too much to overcome. NBC News interviewed with more than half a dozen people from both parties, law enforcement and civil rights organizations, most who spoke on the condition of anonymity in reporting this article. The politics are becoming increasingly complex as Republicans are trying to turn urban crime rates into attacks on Democrats, who they paint as supporters of defunding the police and are warning suburban voters that crime could come to their doorstep if liberals remain in control of government. The police bill being negotiated in Congress wouldn't defund the police, but it is infused into the politics of passage. Lead Republican negotiators, Senator Uncle Tim Scott of South Carolina, publicly outlined 5 issues that would be the center of the discussions. but two have become sticking points. Section 242, the criminal conviction standard of police officers, and qualified immunity, the legal doctrine that limits lawsuits against cops. Those provisions are at the heart of Democrats' demands for police accountability. Early in the negotiations in March, Scott publicly floated a compromise on qualified immunity. Instead of allowing lawsuits against police officers, victims or their families could sue the department or municipality. Democrats were not all convinced. While victims of police malfeasance could win recourse, individual police officers could still be protected from liability for their actions. Then, Representative Jim Coon Clyburn, Democrat of South Carolina, the highest ranking black member in the House and a longtime civil rights activist, said qualified immunity could be set aside for another day. We are at George Floyd, literally and figuratively. And he says qualified immunity can be set aside. These are your colored gatekeepers of respectability and identity politics and white supremacy. A signal to negotiators led by Senator Cory Booker, Democrat of New Jersey, and Representative Karen Bass, Democrat of California, to consider the compromise. Why? They are able to murder us with impunity when you don't end qualified immunity. The state-sanctioned executions continue of our people. The racial profiling continues for our people. And Booker and Bass are considering this compromise. Then what the hell is the point? Progressive Democrats were furious. 2 weeks later on, May 20th, negotiators convened a meeting with the Fraternal Order of Police, a powerful police union with 350,000 members, and the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Scott offered Booker a challenge. If you can get police groups on board with the proposal, then I will not stand in the way. A source familiar with the discussion said it was considered a near impossible task. Scott's office declined to comment when asked about the statement. But Booker was able to gain the police group's buy-in. 2 congressional sources familiar with the negotiation said, signing off on a proposal similar to the one Scott had made. Section 242, the criminal standard for charging police, would be left untouched. But Booker would add 4 new crimes that police officers could be charged with: sexual assault, theft, obstruction of justice, and some aspects of excessive use of force, multiple sources told NBC News. If the man, woman, or child is unarmed and gets murdered by the white inferior Glacier Donkey race soldiers, that should end their qualified immunity. They should not only be brought up on charges, they should be given life sentences. Death would be too good. Death would be getting off with no possibility of parole. Staff and lawmakers were surprised that the police chiefs group and the officers union both backed it. Why? Sources involved with the negotiations said, as part of the compromise, the law enforcement groups also secured additional suicide prevention support and resources for mental distress calls, the difficult and fraught cases that frequently occupy law enforcement. While the most hardline activists on the left were unsatisfied, civil rights groups deemed the compromise a good first step, even if they wanted more accountability for police. And this is what they want to do to our reparations. Give you housing grants to get in the home, but no jobs and no businesses to handle the mortgage once you're in the home. They want to water down our reparations. Give us health care. Not the 151 million year old per ADOX. And so all this is a watered down version of what would really stop this state sanctioned execution of ADOX. Ain't nobody being killed like us. Let's keep it a buck. The very protections Biden awarded the Asians, 68% of their assaults are verbal, and less than 1% of them are in private prisons. Less than 1% of them are executed by the Glacier Donkey Race soldiers. And their median national income is $87,000 to ADOC's median national income last year of $41,000, with a national median home price of $340,000. NAACP President Derek Johnson said in a statement to NBC News that he felt encouraged by the status of the negotiations. In early June, Booker presented the agreement to Scott, but instead of heralding a deal, it unlocked a bitter public fight between police groups that continues to threaten to blow up the negotiations. I hope they blow the hell up. That status of the talks are so dire that civil rights groups who have only projected signs of encouragement are speaking out. Quote, many in law enforcement agree that meaningful change is necessary, but unfortunately, a few are committed to standing in the way with the goal of obstructing the process, Johnson said in a new statement Monday. Scott rejected the agreement and demanded that any deal receive the support of the National Sheriff's Association, the largest sheriff's group. Two sources familiar with the negotiations said. Like James Baldwin said, to be black in America with 3 Ks is to be in a constant state of rage. These Mickey Fickies are literally fighting over these race soldiers' rights to execute us unarmed by state sanction. And wanting to really act as if some watered down version to ending qualified immunity will suffice. You may not live in the poorest sections of town, but unless you've got enough wealth to take care of your people and get them out of Chirac, this could be you. For the educated lames out there. Their bullets know no pedigree. South Carolina is a mostly rural state with nearly 4 dozen county sheriffs that have a significant amount of political clout. And Scott is up for re-election next year, you see? They weaponize ADOC's lives for the come up politically. He's a Republican, but ain't nothing different happening on the Democratic side. The negotiations being made as to whether or not we get to live. The CBC has no backbone whatsoever. They have got to go. You don't see no other group in power in office falling back on whether or not their group gets to live. I've had enough. Let me come see what you have to say about it before I pray us out. Brian said, Lord, that title's first part. Okay. He goes on to say, I saw that foolishness with the elderly woman being arrested. Another case of how bootstrapping cuts us down at the knees. I'll be reporting on it tomorrow, family. Or maybe Monday. I don't know. We'll see. Antoine says, I ain't giving up my guns for my cold, dead hands. Amen to that, Antoine. I advise all of y'all to, when you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. William Dickens says, hello, ADOS fam, not one damn thing. All day, every day. Brian says, an anti-Asian and 1994.2 crime bill. Damn. Yep. William says, I posted your video on the Black Coalition group, sis. They approved a white boy video for talking on Black people's problems. Let's see if they approve a Black ADOS woman. I know it's off topic. I love you for it, brother. Continue to share. Thank you. Tim Coon Scott says Antoine Foster. Hey, my brother. Antoine, I wish Chauvin were going into the California state prison system in general population. San Quentin, High Desert, Chino, somewhere. Yeah, like they did to Khalif Browder, right? Who was wrongfully accused of stealing a backpack. His mother, Adox, didn't have the money to fight. He had to do prison time as a teenager in a maximum security prison. Took his life once released. Brian says, fam, leave them Karens alone. Never. I'm going to call them out every chance I get. Antoine says, I live in Hennepin County, so those are my tax dollars. Yes, family. Y'all got to get politically engaged and shut it down. You see what we're able to do when we move as a block, when we work collectively. We get stuff done. Speaking of which, let me do this right now before I forget. You must fill in the CBC's latest puckery. Pandering for the vote is what I call it, okay? But you must do it anyhow because we don't want them to weaponize the fact that we didn't do it against us, right? So I want to share this with you. Hold on one second. I want to share this with you guys because there's only 3 days left to weigh in. Okay. This is on, oh God, how do I get this to you guys? Okay. The Black Caucus, the CBC is doing a poll. Which legislative priority of the Congressional Black Caucus do you want to hear more about and remain the most important to you? Right now, reparations is at 49%. Voting rights are at 42%. Infrastructure is at 5%. George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is at 4%. Now, they got 3 days and 7 hours left. I'm trying to get the link for you guys. Hold on. Oh, God. Okay, guys, I can't seem to get it quickly. I may have to try to share it tomorrow if I can find it. But you have to go to Twitter, to the Black Caucus. To see the poll. Oh, wait a minute. I think I shared it on my Facebook. Give me a second. Let me go there real quick. Sorry, family. Just give me a second. I meant to have that pulled up. Lord, I'll be trying to think of everything and leaving stuff out. Forgive some more. Let me find it in my post. Here we go. I'm going to copy the link from here and post it. Hold on one second. Okay, hold on one second, family. Oh my goodness, how do I copy this? Okay, refresh, share attachment. Okay, give me a second, family. I'm so sorry. I don't see how to copy this. Let me see. Hold on. Edit post. This is crazy. I see it right here. Let me see here. Okay, close that out. Family, it's the Black Caucus on Twitter. Please visit them for this poll. I can't seem to copy it, not even from Facebook, unfortunately. The Black Caucus on Twitter to fill in their latest poll. And mark reparations. Now, I believe it's pandering, but like I said, all we need is for them to make excuses to not do a thing for us because we don't participate in these polls. So I'm pushing them at every turn, every time I see them, okay? Like they do all of them, they should give it to the family. The pensions you're referring to. Absolutely, William. Because white banks will benefit from that pension. Yes, they do. Antoine says the time should run consecutively instead of concurrently. Yes, to Chauvin. He should have to do state and then the federal. Not concurrently, but he's going for that plea deal. And we probably need to sign a petition of some sort. You know, I can't put out all the fires, but we need a petition of some sort, whomever can take that on, to actually circulate so that he does not get a plea deal and is able to run the sentences, concurrently. They should be ran consecutively. Thank you, Antoine. Brian says the only thing that should give the family peace of mind is him being in prison for the rest of his life. Amen to that. Brian says Chauvin is being given grace upon grace. Ugh. You're right, family. Antoine says Corey Milquetoast Booker, soft as soft serve ice cream. You better know it. Brian says we are always asked to give a little in compromise. It's unfathomable. That's because we don't have a CBC with a backbone. And that's why we need to be politically engaged. That's why I stay on my square and continue to show up in this format to make the case for reparations, weaponizing our vote, and socializing our suffering. And with that said, family, until we meet again, I'm not sure if it'll be tomorrow. I'm going to do my best to get back here tomorrow night because I missed Monday and Tuesday. But if not, I'll see you Monday for sure. I'll be taking some time off to celebrate my daughter's 17th birthday. So Wednesday through Sunday of next week, I'll be out of commission, luxuriating in Hawaii with my lovely daughter and just celebrating life, right? And coming 17 years this far with the grace of God. So shout out to one of my comrades in the movement. I thank you so much. She was instrumental in helping me to get beautiful resort accommodations. So thank you profusely. You know who you are. And it is much needed, okay? Also, family, please save the date. Please save the date. On July 9, We need your testimony at the AB 3121 commission meets again on July 9. I need you to email me so I can send you the link to call in at the bewitching hour to give testimony and to raise questions. And as you know, as you help us to get reparations for California, we're here to craft the best model for state repair that we can also weaponize to get it on a national scale. Everything we're doing is going to be according to the UN, international law, and what it has to say about reparations. So we need all hands on deck. Email me at thereprospect.com. I'm going to put it here in the chat. I'm sorry, thereprospect@gmail.com. Okay? thereprospect@gmail.com. If you want to be added to the list of recipients of how to call in and make your voice heard on what's going down for us here in California as a part of the reparations. The commission meets again July 9. Save the date and Gmail me so I can keep you in the loop as to how you can view the commission meeting, the hearing. It's actually a meeting. They meet like once a month. They got a 2-year cap to get this done. And what we've got to say about it and how it looks is contingent on us to show up on these calls and weigh in and give testimony. So thank you for Gmailing me for that. With that said, family, I want to pray us out that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever ADOX and his allies are, God truly is. Because, family, you are the face of God. You are the voice of God. You are the body temple of the Spirit of the living God. Until we meet again, you make it a beautiful, God-inspired rest of your evening. Know that I love you, Black family, and I love you strong. Peace.